Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Nerds Podcast. On this Best Deal episode, we will explore the human side of real estate investing with a seasoned pro about the legendary best deal of their life. A deal isn't just the investment, it is also the person executing it. Stay with us and learn what it takes to be the best investor possible. Welcome to the Real Estate Nerds Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Royal Smith, owner of Royal Legal Solutions, your one-stop shop for everything real estate investor related for your tax, legal, and business needs. I'm here today with Scott Meyers. He is a great friend of mine and one of the smartest guys in real estate that I know. Scott, thanks for coming on the show. And can you share with us a little bit about yourself so people will have some context of this best deal that we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. Well, maybe I should give them context since you said I'm one of the smartest real estate guys you know as well. So I appreciate that. But yeah, so I've been in real estate for, better than 25 years. Getting in 1993, started buying houses and then apartments, and then got into industrial buildings and self-storage. And that's where I find myself now. I don't do anything in terms of residential. It's nothing but industrial and self-storage. And so the best deal that I'm going to discuss right now is one of our industrial properties. It's the biggest property I've ever owned, and we affectionately call it the boomerang property around here because I bought it and sold it once, and then I bought it back again. I'm getting ready to sell it again.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, yeah, those are always great when you can end up going through and just keep recashing out on the same piece of local property. That's great. So how does that end up happening? What does a scenario look like that you can kind of see when you're going to have a boomerang type of property like that?
Well, I didn't think that I could see it in the beginning. I think sometimes when people take a property back, it means that they never really relinquished it. Or maybe they're loaning on it or something. And there's a piece of that to this one. I had no idea that I was going to buy it back again. But oddly enough, the thing is now, Scott, I think that after I sell it this time, there's a pretty good chance I'm probably going to end up with it again. I have this sense about it. So who knows?
The spidey sense is tingling. Absolutely. Yeah. So Scott, tell us about, in the deal, what is going on, before the first time you get into this deal, what's going on with you? What is the outlook of, the landscape of what it means to be Scott as a real estate investor looking for deals?
Yeah, sure. So this was, the first time I got into this deal was in 2005. And so I was on the tail end of really kind of, turning things around from the last recession that we had, the one prior to 2008 and through 1999, the tech bubble. And with when the presidential administration at the time decided that everybody should own a house, and therefore they implemented the Community Reinvestment Act, in which anybody that could fog a mirror could buy a house, which they did. All of our tenants were leaving in our houses and apartments. We had over 400 apartment units. We had about 100 houses. And so we were trying to turn that ship around and sell things off as quickly as we could. And once we got out of that, I was getting into then looking at commercial and self-storage. Well, when I sold my last apartment complex, I had officed out of that apartment complex. And so my assistant, I was taking my assistant with me, and we were really looking just for a 20,000 square foot, maybe even less than that, like maybe 15 or so thousand square foot building in which we could office out of, and it would be a multi-tenant, and that way it would pay for my office because my office was free. And any other, piece of real estate that I own, I just officed out of these big apartment complexes. There was always room, and an office space in the back to do so. But now we had to go find something. So I was searching around online, and I found when I was looking at my parameters in terms of numbers, cost per square foot and things of that nature, and I tagged on seller financing and a few other keywords. Well, up came this property that had all of that: seller financing. The cost per square foot was crazy. The capitalization rate was crazy on it. The only caveat is that instead of 20,000, it was 200,000 square foot. It was a huge industrial building. It used to be an old A&P. For those that remember the A&P grocery stores, it's an old A&P grocery depot. And so I thought, well, I need to go down and take a look at this, just in terms of the price per square foot. So I came down and took a look at it. And it was way bigger than anything that I had ever imagined. But it was a cool old industrial historical building that was built in 1929, and they had some warehouses that were added onto it. And I think that the thing that attracted me at this point was not only was it new and different, because I was so tired of tenants and toilets, but it was more of a challenge too. And I was like, I wanted to do something fun but challenging but not as challenging as being in the tenant toilet world was. But this was refreshing because it wasn't. We were talking about people storing, warehousing and some commercial office space and things of that nature. And so I was kind of wanting to spread my wings, and I guess maybe more than anything, probably have a second chance to prove myself in the real estate world, because it was either this or go back and get a job. And well, as you and I discussed before this call, that's not an option. If I had to go support my family doing it that way, I would, but I really want to stay in real estate. So we made a run at this deal, and at the time we didn't have when we wound down our apartments and our houses, still in a really low cash situation or cash poor. We didn't profit as much as we had wanted to, and so in order to buy something like this, fortunately, I was able to get a loan, an 80% LTV loan, and then the seller was offering a seller carryback, and they were holding the note in second position on this, and allowed me to get in for literally no money down into this project. So a 200,000 square foot building at $1.5 million, and I got in for no money down. So that was pretty cool. And it was cash flowing still after paying both notes to the bank and to the individual, the seller, in a crazy fashion with lots of room to expand. Now, the challenge with this, Scott, is that I had, well, there were multiple, but one was that this wasn't just a real estate play. It had been operating in the past as a small business incubator. So it was called the Entrepreneur Business Center. And so there were lots of folks coming in to get inexpensive space, $1 a square foot a month, all utilities included. And then they had shared conference rooms and office space that could be, what we call co-working space now today. And it was really set up for folks that were coming out of the basement, coming out of Starbucks, maybe working out of their truck, to have an office that was inexpensive and a way to have access to all these conference rooms and group sharing facilities, copiers, printers, you name it. Plus, when it was run as an incubator at the time, they were having the Small Business Administration come over and assist with business planning and microloans and things of that nature. Well, it had ceased operating that way prior to me buying it. The owner that had it right now, he'd owned it for 3 years, and he was a gentleman that was in his 80s, and he just wasn't into that entrepreneur stuff. He was just into the real estate. Well, we decided that the highest and best use for this was to really implement those incubator services again. And so we joined the National Business Incubator Association. And long story short, did I not just buy an office building that I could office out of, but not only a huge facility, but we then became the largest small business incubator in the state, and I was the executive director. So I got myself a job that I kind of didn't necessarily want, but enjoyed once I got into it. But then also had a big old building. So we then created a lot of value into this, and this was the only thing I was doing. I sold everything off, and so this was the only real estate play I had at the time. We were buying self-storage facilities in subsequent years, but for about the first year and a half to 2 years, we were really just driving the value in this, lowering expenses, doing some rehab, and increasing the income. So we added some more office space, about 6,000 square feet of office to it. Leased up every single inch of this property that we could possibly lease up, and the cash flow was great. And now, fast forward, we're at 2007, and I would love to tell you, Scott, and everybody here, that my crystal ball was working well, or that I had some brilliant insight as to what was going to happen in 2008. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't. It was time. I'd increased the value of this. Everything was full. We were at the top of the market, so I put it out for sale. So I listed it and sold it for $3.9 million, and I had $1.9 million into it. We spent $400,000 on the adding the office spaces and some others, and so put it under contract then for full list price, $3.9 million. And I took back a second mortgage on it, just like the previous owner did with me when we sold it. So I took 10% seller carryback back at $390,000 in a note made out to me. And so we sold it, and did extremely well. That was the largest payday I had ever seen. And we did a 1031 tax deferred exchange into another self-storage facility. And so we were now all in self-storage. That was it. That was all we were doing. Well, then, as you all know, what happened in 2008 and subsequent years, this the seller, he filed, or excuse me, the buyer of this property, he went bankrupt. He had developments. He was from California, had developments out there in Hawaii, and went belly up. And so there went my $390,000. So but I think, Scott, as you tell your folks, if you're going to sell something with, seller financing, just be prepared to lose it. You better be happy with what you get at the closing table, because there's no assurance that you're going to get anything, on top of that. And so I was a little disappointed in that, to say the least. But then within fast forward a couple of years later, now it's 2011. And he's contacting me and stating, hey, I filed bankruptcy, and this is the last thing that we're winding down, and it's going to go back to the bank now. They're not patient with selling it any longer, do anything, and it's going to probably just go dark. And so I visited. He'd contacted me like 2 or 3 times every year. He'd call me, and then the price would come down by like $300,000 or $400,000. So finally, he said, hey, this thing's for sale. I had it under contract for $600,000. And it's going to go back to the bank, or, I'm at the end of my rope. I can't pay utilities. There's liens on it from contractors. It's going to go dark, and the city's going to take it over if you want to go take a look at it. So I went down and looked at it again, and nobody knows this building better than me. But I thought, even if I'm half as good as I was the last time, and now they were able to turn this around and maybe sell it for $2 million, perhaps it's worth taking a run at. And so I decided that we had to, for $3.98 a square foot, that we're buying this thing back for $500,000 for a 200,000 square foot building. We couldn't pass it up. So it wouldn't support a bank loan at this point. It just didn't have enough net operating income. So I got really good, really quick at raising some private capital, put together a private placement, and we had 14 investors put in, and we took it down all cash. And and I guess kind of maybe a funny note in this, this perhaps is a good lesson for these folks, that for this story, even though it wasn't it all turned out well. But, when I'm having these negotiations with this guy, I'm really realizing that not only in addition to the $545,000 that I had to spend to buy the property back, or that was the price to clear it out, but there was an additional almost $100,000 in liens that had to be cleared. In order to clear the title, I had to pay the liens. So in other words, he stiffed all these contractors, and I had to pay his debts. He also owed taxes on it, admin taxes. I had to pay the back taxes that he hadn't paid. And now, remind you, here's a lesson, is that this is the guy that stiffed me for $390,000, and I'm paying all of his back bills, even though I didn't get paid for my portion. And not only is that the case, but I also had to pay his back attorney fees, the same attorney who, put him through bankruptcy so that he could not pay me. So, a couple of ways of looking at this, but the only way to look at it is that at this point, it just becomes business, and take the emotion out of it. And even though I got my
that, Scott? Like, because that's a big pill to swallow, right? Like,
it's
how
huge.
do you actually do that though? Because a lot of people are like, oh, it's just business. You just got to clear your mind of it. It's like, that's not like a decision. That's not like something you just like wake up and be like, oh, I'm really angry about this. And then 1 second, like when somebody tells you that, you're not like, okay, now I'm good. Like, how do you transition from one to the other, do you think?
It's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's all on the numbers, and it's the same when you look at, how many wholesalers do we have out there that are either listening to this or part of your tribe that somebody always they'll go back into the tax records and they'll look at this wholesaler's price and say, well, I can see that you bought it for this and you're selling it to me for X. I just can't buy it from you because you're going to make this amount of money on it. Well, what difference does it make? If you're going to take that property from here to here in value and you're going to make this much money on it, what do you care what the guy makes that brought it to you? Maybe he paid $1 for that property and he's selling it to you for $20,000. Who cares? If you're going to buy it for $20,000 and you're going to rehab it for $15,000 and sell it for $80,000 or $60,000, who cares? And so, I guess that's probably the best analogy. And so once people get over that, when the retailers that buy houses from wholesalers get over that, then they're the ones that'll, they just look at it for dollars and cents. Now this is a little different because the guy actually stiffed me. It's not like he's making money, but
right.
It's no different. That's kind of what I had to tell myself is like, okay, here's a gift. I get this property back. I'm the only one who knows how to run this thing. Nobody else is looking at this price. I got the exclusive rights to look at buying this building for $3.98 a square foot, which there are no other properties listed on LoopNet or probably by any broker in the country in industrial property selling anywhere at the time for $3.98 a foot. And I'm the only one who knows about it. And I'm the only one who can take it from here to last time I took it up to a value of $4 million. Even during a recession, what can I do with it? Well, let's take a look. So from that standpoint, you know what? Here's an opportunity for me to recoup my $390,000 and probably the best way for me to do it rather than what I was doing right now.
I'm wondering
So,
about here, Scott, and listening to the story about it, something that maybe you did that you kind of hinted at earlier
mhm,
was because you're saying it's just business, but that's almost like in a way what I'm gleaming from you is like a way of looking at it and saying that I can't get angry at somebody because they
mhm,
exercise their legal options because I knew what the legal options were that they had and where that could go in the future. And
mhm.
because those eventualities played out that way, I can't all of a sudden be upset because that happened because I knew
You're
about
right.
that when I got in the deal and I had to make that decision at that
Yep.
time that I was okay with that
Mhm.
being one of the eventualities. Maybe
You're right.
that's a way to kind of like diffuse the
It
like
is.
anger, like somebody hurt me. It's like,
Mhm.
no, I
Yep.
made that decision really.
Mhm. Yep. Well, so yeah, so exactly, when you put yourself in that position, even though it's highly unlikely, or at least maybe you think it's highly unlikely, you need to be prepared for it. When it happens, it stinks, and you may be mad at the way that it happened and the approach that this individual took. But look at it for what it is, whether it is a business, and if this thing would have come to me any other way, even though it was the guy who brought it to me, I'd have been happy as a lark to take this thing and say, hey, I think I can make a couple $1,000,000 on
Right.
this opportunity in front of me right now. So again, what difference does it make from that standpoint? So the interesting thing is I was hardened a little bit because of the lesson I learned from the gentleman that I bought it from. He was an old. Funny thing, Scott, he's mentoring me kind of along the way in buying this property. He was very, just one of those, hey, I see a little of myself in you, son, and taking me
Yeah.
under his wing and telling me how to, structure things, kind of be walking through the process because this was bigger than anything that we had done in the past. But by the same time, when it came down to the closing, there was just a little something that I had missed in the purchase agreement, which gave him the right to basically hold me over a barrel. And my broker at the time, he wasn't doing anything to say, hey, you need to, hold him to it, or you need to, to sue for this, or, do for that. And he knew full well what he was doing, the seller. So he was part doing what he's done all along. I found out the guy was kind of a snake, but also in his later years turning into somewhat of a mentor to other people as well. And so again, another crummy lesson, a way of learning how to go about things. But this guy, at the end of it, all friends, and it was all business to him. And it was just like, hey, I helped you out along the way, but you know what? I'm not going to pass up my opportunity to screw you a little bit and get another $10,000 in my pocket. And you should be happy about it, Scott, because I just taught you a lesson, and you'll never allow that to happen to you again. Now, those aren't his words, but those were his actions, and behind it, that's the way he viewed any business transaction in which he won in the end. That everybody should be, happy, and it's all because all's fair in love and war. And so I was hardened, just a little bit by that experience with him. To then it made it an easier pill to swallow, to step back and say, this is business, and this is numbers, and that's the only way to take a look at it.
So in
And
your community of people that you're doing deals with, like none of this stuff is actually personal. It's actually just 100% like just like you had warfare. The end of the war is over. Now we got to make peace and see how we can work together.
I, you
At the
know,
next thing, is that really what's going on?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
the folks I do business with now, the capacity in which I'm partnering with folks is one of almost exclusively is a limited partner and general partner. So I'm general partner, and I'm calling the shots, and everybody else is usually passive investors. I do have other partnerships where we're calling the shots together, and haven't run into any types of roadblocks or anything along the way, challenges that are going to change that relationship. I'm sure it'll come up again. That's just what happens in business, and I did just have one recently, as a matter of fact, with a partner that we went down this path together in a facility. And very shortly after, turned right back around and said, "Nah, I think I kind of want to unwind this thing. I can see the potential in it, and I like the cash flow and what that means for my wife and I, and so we kind of want you out." And I said, well, it's not our original agreement, and but who wants to be married to somebody who doesn't want you around or in this? And so we're looking at this from a standpoint. I'm not rushing to unwind this for any reason, because there's no reason to do so. But that means a buyout, and I have to be happy with a number in terms of a buyout, and that's fine. It's better than forcing that, and then going through the business partnership in 5 years, before we sell something, and being just miserable about it. Life's too short these days for that type of thing.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Life's too short to be able to cry over spilt milk. And it definitely helps
Hmm.
if you can compartmentalize it to say this is just a business. And some
Hmm.
some guys I hear talking about it say, like, you almost have to look at it as if it were a game and there's rules that you play by, and how well do you understand the game that's
Yeah,
happening? Is
it
that kind
truly
of
is.
like the mentality that you use to help keep you,
Mhm.
keeping from taking things personally?
I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, it truly is. We navigate through playing the game, with the highest of integrity. I mean, that's what we stand on. And that's because, again, I don't want to go work for somebody else. And I have an investment business and I have an education business. And, the minute that I start to pull some shenanigans and somebody calls me out on the rug, you and I both know, you probably more than I, that in this world of social media transparency, your whole, much of your business is on Facebook. It doesn't take but, one or two people to call you out in terms of your integrity or the way you've handled a deal or handled an individual or handled an individual's emotions in a deal. And, anything can be construed, and then you are just slayed in the court of public opinion. And, there goes a portion of, if not your business. And that means two for me. I raise private equity. So if my name gets out there in terms of not operating in integrity and I'm just a schmuck, then nobody's going to invest with me passively, and nobody's going to want to take our training from anybody who's not operating above the board and with the highest integrity. And so more than anything else, more than protecting our credit, more than trying to save a buck, or fight, for what we think is ours in terms of dollars or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. At the end of the day, this is a marathon, and our integrity and operating from that standpoint of protecting that above anything else, above profits in certain situations. That's how we play the game. There's other folks that would rather not. They view it as short term, and the game's going to end in a couple hours, and by God, I better win at all costs, and I don't care who I crush in the meantime, because I got the pot of gold.
That's the other guy. That's exactly what the mentality of the other guy is. But the new trend that's actually coming up, what we live and die by at Royal Legal Solutions, and it sounds like what you're doing as well too, is saying that, and in the modern age, actually, your reputation is everything. That it comes to that you can't do business anymore because your reputation is actually too transparent and too widespread and too easy to find out about. So you can't hide anymore. And what's actually made us shift to do, I think probably similar to what you do, is that we have to, people used to be able to advertise it's 100% money back guarantee to buy credibility. Well, in the modern age of doing business, it implicitly has to be that, because you can't really afford to have crazy people blast you on social media. You have to be able to take on, all these other pieces up. And I just wanted to loop back to something, Scott, because I know we have a limited amount of time here today. And there was a piece that you touched on earlier that was really good about when you were taking on the new project. You went in and you ended up coming into the building that you bought for the first time. And you were looking at saying, okay, how can this make sense? It looks like you got it for no money down, which is awesome. But there's a key piece that you jumped in here because it was something new. It wasn't just a piece of real estate, but you were also building a business simultaneously with the real estate. And so you're doing two parallel things, which is almost like what we call in the entrepreneurial world 0 to 1s. Like I'm creating from something from the ground and having to build a new, which is crazy difficult. And it's something I haven't really necessarily done before. But what was really neat with that is I was wondering if you would elaborate a little more on it. It was the importance of having a solo focus, because that with the time what you did is you actually extricated yourself from all of the other business activities or real estate you were doing. And that became a single task of like, I'm only doing this right now. So all your energy was put into that. Would you elaborate a little bit more on the importance of that singularity of focus?
Well, I'm not the smartest guy, but I will certainly outwork other folks, and operating from a place of integrity tends to, draw people to us. That is the business capital that I have in spades versus just about anything else, is being able to rally folks around to want to be a part of what we're doing. And so that's what we did in this project. I was working with the city, and very, very well aware of PR and how we can leverage that in terms of what we're doing to create this small business incubator again. I mean, that's always big news in the business journals. The city comes alongside the Small Business Administration. We get press releases, and all of this is creating a buzz around this building. And so this is still a building, and by the way, I'm in the same building right now. That's where we're speaking from. And more folks were attracted to this. And so as you lease up the building and people want to become a part of this, then, up goes the net operating income and the ultimate value of this. And so in order to do that, there's anybody that could go out and rent an office space that's closer to downtown, even if it doesn't have free parking. It's more of a Class A office space, Class B, chic, close to restaurants. I mean, you name it. But what we created a mile from downtown, even though it did have free parking, was a Class C facility in a Class C neighborhood But we had 110 entrepreneurs in all aspects of business, running and starting and launching businesses. And, as they say, the fire burns hotter when the coals are closer together. And so just the buzz around an entrepreneurial venture, a whole bunch of folks that could learn and lean on each other, from Pizza Fridays to, pitching their own business plans, even if they launched their business a year ago, business plan competitions, and then, meetings specifically on how to raise capital and how to do things better, where everybody can lean on each other, cry on each other's shoulders when there's losses in their business. We'd created this pretty cool community, and it was getting a lot of exposure from the city and elsewhere. And there isn't anybody, a property manager that's getting paid whatever a property manager does for an office building. They're not going to do those types of things to just lease up a building. They're not going to go the extra effort to create a community. And so we knew that's, we had a tiger by the tail, and perhaps I guess it is a little bit of an ego piece as well, to say, hey, this, here's what we've created. And yes, Scott Meyers is the executive director, but also at the end of the day, no glory to me, but just to point back to say, hey, here's a venture that worked. Here's an idea that we took, and we decided that this was the approach that we're going to take. This was a lot of gut feel, and it worked. So it's like fishing, it's like marketing. You throw something out and you see if if fish bite on it or if people take. And then when you do that and you continue to work at it and perfect it, and then you see that you built something that's more unique than anything else out there, that's gratifying. I mean, that's in business, it's tough. I used to rehab houses, and we'd paint a whole house with a sprayer in a day, and I felt like I accomplished something. But in business, we move paper from one side of the desk to the other and clear out email inboxes. You can't really tell that you've moved the needle. Well, this was a little bit different. We could definitely tell that we moved the needle, and that's the fun part of what we did.
And so with this deal, the whole deal was predicated on the fact that you were actually going to have a business that you were going to launch simultaneously with the piece of real estate that you were building, right?
Yeah.
So as much as this was like a real estate play, it was really a business play that had a real estate component to it. Fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is that, and when you're looking at your current stuff that you're working with and your current real estate investments, is that also what you're looking at saying that's actually where you maximize value or is it really kind of like a passive investment type strategy? Or are you constantly looking to say, how can we make this an active business and tied in with the real estate?
Now, so let me finish this story, which leads directly into that. Yeah. So, we bought the building back again, and we're going through the same things, but this time as a real estate play this time around, because what the term incubator and accelerator really has kind of morphed through the years since we sold this last one, and meaning it comes along with usually in partnership with a university and significant amount of dollars investing in and equity in people's businesses, and I didn't have the time to devote to that this time around. So we realized that there's still a need for this type of space, but just not without all the support. And so we've done that. We've leased it back up again. It's a nice, clean building, and it operates in the same fashion, just doesn't have the assistance that comes along with it. And it's now listed for $3 million instead of 3.9. So we thought maybe we'd sell it for 2. We're going to sell it for somewhere shy of $3 million. And then along the way, I built a self-storage business. We own and develop self-storage facilities all across the country. But then I began teaching people how to invest in self-storage. So after I exited this property the first time, in 2008, we launched our self-storage education business. And both of those businesses were going forward. They were 60-hour-a-week businesses because both were doing extremely well. And then I had to draw a line in the sand and say, once again, where are my talents best spent? And so we raised our prices again, like we did in this building, and but provided coaching and mentoring at the top level in our education business rather than the looky-loos and people, the seminar junkies. We said, we're only going to work with people that are going to go out and do this. So we increased our prices, and we added a partnering component that says at this top level, these are the only folks that we're going to mentor. And when we mentor them, we're also going to get into a deal with them, and we guarantee that we will assist them in getting into a deal in which we interject ourselves as a small percentage. So that feeds both of my need and desire and want to just coach and help and mentor people along, but then also doesn't take away from the thing which I'm my highest and best use and what I really like to do the most, which is really turning these deals around and creating value in either a vacant piece of ground that we build a self-storage facility on, or a bowling alley that we buy and convert to self-storage and add an income stream to from nothing, like you had mentioned, but then doing it along with other folks and then leveraging that. So we've taught them, we've worked alongside of them. They're our partners, and then they go out and do more deals and hopefully bring us into those deals as well. And it leverages my time. And again, getting away from the things that don't make sense, but moving towards the things that I love to do, which is very little time, but focused time teaching people, and very focused time investing in real estate at the highest or the biggest types of deals with the most upside and gain.
Ah, man, Scott, you're a Goliath, man, of doing real estate development as well with doing entrepreneurship all in the same breath. That's
I'm
fantastic.
blessed. I'm very blessed. It's nothing. I
You
am
have so
just
much fun.
following the
I was like, that sounds like a blast. To be
It
able to do
is.
the same.
We're in a good place.
Yeah, that's great, man. I'm really stoked for you. It sounds like you're doing having so much going on, and that's really I bet people just learn the reams from your education materials coming through with it, just because to be able to compare just the mindsets that you have to have with the way that you analyze problems from both an entrepreneurial perspective as well as looking at it from a real estate perspective are just really dynamic. You don't really find that those two cross over very much inside of the marketplace of ideas. With real estate, because just most real estate investors just typically are looking to aren't looking from that perspective of like the imagination, the vision that it really takes to be able to produce that. So that's awesome. I know we're short on time here, Scott. So typically what we do at the end of each episode is a lesson learned from each guest, and I'll kick us off for what I learned from today was sitting here with you was that that there's the ability that we've touched on before of saying that we can take on really big projects like you did initially with looking at what that was for the piece of real estate in conjunction with doing a building of a business, but it really takes a ton of energy and singular focus into that to be successful. I think one of the stories that I hear more often is when people bite off those types of pieces and they have so many other things going on in their lives, and then they can't really dedicate all the energy and focus they need into it. And so it fizzles out, and they had a great vision, but they didn't have poor execution because they didn't have it. And so I just want to applaud you on saying that that's awesome that you did that. And I think that's a great lesson for all of us to do it. And that way it's the singularity of focus and not multitasking, single tasking into something that's going to be huge. So thanks. That's what I picked up from today, and I'm stoked about. If there's something that you wanted the audience to walk away from your story here today, Scott, like what would that be?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things that the drum that we're beating these days, one of which is kind of speed. The projects that we're looking at right now are pretty complex, and it's really costly if we don't hit our marks. And it's, we have to keep on top of, contractors. We have to keep on top of the loan process. A lot of things that we would love to have move in a linear fashion don't always do that. We always have to wait. There's carts and there's horses, and they're getting jumbled around at times. And so just making sure that we're on top of everything and everybody, because speed is the name of the game right now. And when things get delayed, it's just costly, and we realize that. But probably the bigger piece right now, which also kind of works into this in terms of time and timing. And I'm not sure, I missed a couple of podcasts here and there, Scott, but talking about the pending correction, it's going to happen. We all know that, and there's signs that we're heading into a correction now. The bond market is doing the same things it always does, heading into a correction. Interest rates creeping up, consumer confidence is down, business bankruptcies are up again. So, all the markers are there that it may be happening, but it still may be delayed another year and a half or two. But just, having that mindset and that focus, again, 2008, there was when Lehman dropped, banks shut off funding and people got left holding the bag, and the carnage was everywhere in terms of real estate investors all across the landscape. But especially those folks that were counting on selling something to get paid back again, and counting on their credit lines always staying open in order to do business. And then when the faucet was shut off, then they folded immediately. And so what we're constantly looking at is every project that we go into, and all the folks that we talk to right now is, okay, is this a 1-year project? Is this a 2-year project? Is this a 5-year project? And what's going to happen, when the recession hits? Interest rates go up, cap rates go up, the value of your real estate goes down. Are you counting on the fact that you have to sell this, in 3 years because you have to pay your equity investors back in that time frame? Well, we're going to be in a recession in 3 years. Interest rates are going to look like this. Just making sure that everybody that I'm shouting it from the rooftops, if you will, just saying, hey, all you investors out there thinking that, this boom that has been going on, and all the folks that came into real estate after, 2009, 10, 11, you're not as good as you think you are. You've got a large wind in your sail right now of a booming economy. So don't think for 1 minute that you're as good as you think you are, and especially if you're not preparing for what's going to happen when this changes. And when it changes, we're going to go through the same thing we do during every correction, and that those folks that have taken a good hard look at their business model and are prepared for what happens during a recession when interest rates go up and loans aren't as plentiful if you're selling houses or if you have to sell all types of real estate and your credit lines go up or they're shut off due to the recession. If you haven't prepared for that, then some of those folks, inevitably, as you and I both know, Scott, are going to, be some of the carnage in this next one. So, and if you don't know what that looks like because you haven't been through a recession, then find a mentor, find somebody to talk to, talk to a banker, because they're doing the same things in terms of the loans that they make right now. We're seeing different terms being made on loans. The lenders, the banks are getting prepared for the recession. So if you haven't given it any thought, give it some thought because the landscape will be changing soon. And if you're not prepared for it, you may be in for a rude awakening and you may not be able to, backpedal, change direction, or wind something down as quickly as you would like. And then unfortunately, you don't want to do that on the bank's terms. You want to do that on your terms. So start preparing. That's, again, a long-winded answer to your question, but that's probably the piece of wisdom or experience having gone through now, essentially 2.5 recessions in real estate and the things that we've learned and the things that we're having discussions about these days.
That's awesome, Scott. No, I think that's incredibly good advice. And it's one of the pieces that can actually be painful to have to look at for everybody to do. Yep. I think it's one of those things like, and for a lot of people, it's like estate planning, right? You never want to think about your death and what I have to do with that. And you never want to think about the economy reversal because you're like, things are going pretty good right now. That sounds like a lot of work to have to actually plan for and figure out what that's going to look like. But the price that you pay for eating the bowl, eating your salad right now is that you're a little bit healthier later on, and that's what, I think that's what we have to look for. And that's what it really takes. If you really want to be an entrepreneur and you really want to be an investor in the top levels of the game, sometimes it means, chewing a little bit of glass, to go through the rough part. So that's awesome.
Well, that hard work right now, Scott, is not as hard as trying to wind a business down with the bankers forcing you to wind it down. So it's worth doing it now.
Yeah, right. Because it's a lot better to try to look at trying to do that now than it is to try to figure out, holy smokes, how well do I bounce back after I'm sitting there, after 4 nights of crying on my couch because I don't know what to do.
Right.
Like, that's way worse, right? Yep. But it's something, if you haven't lived through a recession before and gotten bit really hard, you don't really know the full extent of the pain.
Yep.
And in my field, we talk about a lot about lawsuits being the same thing. Like, most people aren't really sued that often. It might happen once or twice in their entire life as a real estate investor, but it's crippling. You see people age overnight because of it. And recessions are similar in how they can just devastate you if you don't prepare for them. And so, law favors a proactive, finances favor proactive. Being proactive is the only way to live.
It is.
If you really want to be successful long term. So, Scott, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Our website, selfstorageinvesting.com, selfstorageinvesting.com. That way they have access to me, access to some resources on the real estate side. We talk a little bit about our journey as we did today. And then there's also information about our charity piece. We build houses in Mexico and the Dominican Republic and give them away. And so if that's something you're interested in being a part of as well, it's basically our business life is there on our site.
That's awesome, Scott. Thanks so much for being on the show. And of course, this is a Best Deals episode with my good friend Scott. And this is the Royal Legal Solutions representative, Scott Royal Smith, with the Real Estate Nerds podcast. Everybody join up with us here on social media. If you ever get an opportunity, we're blasting all kinds of cool stuff for you with free content and also promoting our speakers ahead of time so you guys can get a better feel for everybody before they get on the show. So, Scott, for coming on. And everybody, until next time, everybody be well. Thanks. That's all for this Best Deal episode, and I'm your host, Scott Royal Smith, with the Real Estate Nerds podcast. When investments go good, they can go great. Your legendary best deal could be your next one, so keep at it. Thank you for joining us, and if you enjoyed the show, leave a review to help clue in those sleeping masses for what they need to know and what we all need reminders of. Do your good deed for the day, and I'll see you again soon.